I'm Marissa Blackwood, and since it's now summer, have you heard of the son of Sam, David Berkowitz? During the mid-1970s, David Berkowitz began a lengthy crime spree throughout the New York boroughs of the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens, seeking young female victims. He was purportedly most attracted to white women with long, dark, wavy hair. All of but one of the crime scenes involved two victims. He infamously committed some of his attacks while the women were sitting with boyfriends in parked cars. He started killing because he claims a dog possessed by a demon told him to do so. Listener's discretion is advised. If you're a fan of horror movies or true crime, or perhaps both like myself, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, don't forget to check us out on YouTube at All Things Murder. New episodes on Thursdays. David Berkowitz was born Richard David Falco on June 1st, 1953 in Brooklyn, New York. He was just like, I'm out. I don't want to sign papers. His mother, Betty, was married to Tony Falco, and they did have a daughter together. And then Tony left her, but they never officially divorced. He was just like, I'm out. I don't want to sign papers. So she had an affair with a married man named Joseph Kleinman. Now, they got together and obviously got pregnant. He told her, just to get rid of the baby. So Betty had the baby and listed Tony, her technical husband, as the father, then gave the baby up for adoption. His adoptive parents switched his first and middle names and gave him their surname. Now, from a young age, David began to show early signs that he was going to be a serial-killing psycho. While he was above average intelligence, he lost interest in school and just started focusing on more rebellious habits, as a killer usually does. David got involved in petty larceny and was a pyromania. However, his misbehavior never led to any legal troubles or impacted the school records. Still showed up on time and was never arrested. What's going on? He was an avid baseball player and earned a reputation of being a bully in his neighborhood. Is that really a shock? When he was about 14, David's adoptive mother, she died of breast cancer, and then his relationship with his adoptive dad became really strained since he did not approve of his new stepmother. We've all been there. When he was 18 in 1971, David entered the U.S. Army and served both in the U.S. as well as South Korea. He was honorably discharged 3 years later. David then tracked down his birth mother, Betty Falco. So started asking her some questions, and when his mom told him about his illegitimate birth and the recent death of his birth father, obviously this is going to make David upset. He eventually lost contact with his birth mother, and he's just started working an odd number of blue-collar jobs. Working around, saving money. My mom just devastated my entire life. The murders. According to his own account, his killing career began on December 24th of 1975, where he stabbed two women using a hunting knife in Co-op City. The first alleged victim was a Hispanic woman who was never identified by the police. The second was 15-year-old Michelle Foreman, who was a sophomore at Truman High School, whom he stabbed 6 times on a bridge near Dreiser Loop, and whose injuries were serious enough for her to be hospitalized for a week. So she did survive. David was not suspected of these crimes, and soon afterward he moved to a new apartment in Yonkers. In the early hours of July 29, 1976, 18-year-old Donna Laura and 19-year-old Jody Valenti were sitting in Jody's car when David walked up to the car and just shot them. He fired 3 shots and then walked away. Laura was killed instantly, but Jody survived. When Jody was questioned by the police, she said that she did not recognize the man, but she gave a description which fit the statement with Laura's father, who said that he saw the same guy sitting in a yellow car. Testimony by other individuals in the neighborhood stated that yellow car was seen driving around the neighborhood at night. It's yellow. It is going to be obvious. Police determined that the gun that was used was a .44 caliber bulldog. On October 23, 1976, David struck again, this time in Flushing, a community in the boroughs of Queens, for those who do not know. Carl DeNiro and Rosemary Keenan were sitting in their car, parked, when the windows shattered. Rosemary immediately started the car to get away. It was not until they got help that they realized that they had been shot at. and Carl had a bullet wound in his head. Both Denaro and Keenan survived the attack, but neither saw the shooter. Police determined that the bullets were .44 caliber, but could not determine what kind of gun it came from. Investigators did not initially draw a connection between this shooting and the previous one because they occurred in two separate New York boroughs. They said this is just a typical Tuesday, just a coincidence that it has happened. Shortly after midnight on November 27th of 1976, 16-year-old Donna DeMasi and 18-year-old Joanne Lamino were sitting in Joanne's porch in Boroughs, Queens. As they were talking, a man came up to them dressed in military uniform, and he started asking them for directions in a high-pitched voice before taking out a revolver and shooting them. They both fell injured and the shooter ran away. Both the girls survived their wounds, but Joanne was paralyzed. Police were able to determine that the bullets were from an unknown .44 caliber gun. They were also able to make composite sketches based on testimony from the girls and neighborhood witnesses. Stop doing it around witnesses. On January 30th of 1977, Christine Freund and John Deal were sitting in John's car in Queens when the car was shot at. John suffered minor injuries, and Christine died of injuries at the hospital, and neither of them ever saw their shooter. After this shooting, police publicly connected this case with previous shootings. Yeah. They observed that all shootings involved a .44 caliber gun, and the shooter seemed to target young women with long dark hair. When the composite sketches from the various attacks were released, NYPD officials noted that they were likely searching for multiple shooters. They're like, it can't just be one guy, right? No way. That's a lot of travel. On March 8th of 1977, Columbia University student Virginia Vokershinen was shot when she was walking home from class. She lived just 1 block away from fellow victim Christine Freund. Now, she was shot several times and eventually died of a gunshot wound to the head. At a press conference on March 10th of 1977, police announced that that same .44 caliber pistol had been used in several of the shootings, which we all connected earlier. The Operation Omega Task Force, which came to some 300 police officers, were charged with investigating the crimes under the direction of Deputy Inspector Timothy J. Dowd. Police speculated that the killer had a vendetta against women, perhaps due to chronic rejection. Gentlemen, if a woman tells you no, don't go around killing people. Just sit at home, eat some ice cream, and you'll get through it. On April 17th of 1977, Alexander Isu and Valentina Serrani were in the Bronx, several blocks away from the scene of the Valenti Lori shooting. The pair were each shot twice while sitting in a car, and both died before they could talk to the police. Investigators determined they were killed by the same suspect in other shootings with the same .44 caliber firearm. At the crime scene, police discovered a handwritten letter addressed to the captain of the NYPD. In this letter, David referred to himself as the son of Sam and expressed his desire to continue his shooting sprees. The manhunt. With the information from the first letter and the connections between the previous shootings, investigators began to create a psychological profile for the suspect. For those of you who do not know, I love Criminal Minds, so I love me a good profile. The suspect was described as neurotic, potentially suffering from paranoid schizophrenia, and believed that he was possessed by demons. On May 30th of 1977, Jimmy Breslin was a columnist for the Daily News. He received the second Son of Sam letter. It was postmarked for that same day from Englewood, New Jersey. The envelope had words, "Blood and family, darkness and death, absolute depravity, .44, written on the reverse side. If I got that, I'd be like, nope. All of the no. In this letter, the Son of Sam stated that he was a reader of Breslin's column and referenced several of the past victims. He also continued to mock the NYPD over their inability to solve this case. In the letter, he also asked, quote, "What will you have for July 29th?" Investigators believe that this was a warning, as July 29th would be the anniversary of the first shooting. One notable conversation was that this letter seemed to be written in a more sophisticated manner than the first one. This led investigators to believe that the letter could have been written by a copycat. They're like, this one was done way better. Obviously not our guy. The letter was published about a week later and sent much of New York City into a panic, which I believe everyone would freak out if there was a crazy guy just killing random people. Many women opted to change their hairstyle due to David's preference of attacking women with long, dark hair. On June 26 of 1977, the Son of Sam made another appearance, this time in Bayside, Queens. Sal Lupo and Judy Placido were sitting in their car in the early morning hours when they were shot with 3 gunshots. They both suffered minor injuries and survived, though neither saw their attacker. However, witness reported seeing a tall, stocky man with dark hair fleeing the crime scene, as well as a blonde man with a mustache driving in the area. They're like, which one is it? Police thought that the dark man was their suspect and the blonde was a witness. On July 31st, 1977, just 2 days after the anniversary of the first shooting, David shot again, this time in Brooklyn. Stacy Markowitz and Robert Vellante were in Robert's car, parked near a park, when a man walked up to the passenger side and just started shooting. Stacy died at the hospital, and Robert suffered non-life-threatening injuries. Unlike most of the other female victims, Stacy did not have long or dark hair. So what's going on then, David? There were several witnesses to this shooting who were able to provide descriptions of the shooter to the police. One of the witnesses described that the man looked like he was wearing a wig, which could account for the varying descriptions of seeing a guy with blonde and dark hair. Several witnesses saw a man matching David's description, wearing a wig, driving a yellow car without any headlights, and speeding away from the crime scene. So they said, not only does it look like you are wearing a wig, you are in the brightest color car, fleeing a crime scene in a hurry. You are a suspect. Police decided to investigate the owners, any yellow cars matching that description. David's car was one of those cars, but investigators initially pegged him as a witness rather than a suspect. They're like, look at this guy, he wouldn't harm a fly. On August 10th, 1977, police searched David's car. Inside, they found a rifle, a duffel bag filled with ammunition, maps of the crime scenes, and an unsent Son of Sam letter addressed to Sergeant Dowd of the Omega Task Force. Police decided to wait for David to leave his apartment, hopefully with enough time to obtain a warrant, as they had searched his car without one. Really bad. The warrant never arrived, but police surrounded David when he left his apartment, holding a .44 Bulldog in a paper bag. When David was arrested, he allegedly told police, "Well, you got me. How come it took you such a long time?" When police searched David's apartment, they found satanic graffiti drawn on the walls and diaries detailing his alleged 1,400 arsons in the New York area. When David was taken in for questioning, he quickly confessed to the shootings and stated that, yeah, I'll plead guilty. When police asked what was his motivation for the killing spree, he said that his former neighbor, Sam Carr, had a dog that was possessed by a demon, which told David to kill. Sam Carr is the same Sam that inspired his nickname, the Son of Sam. David was sentenced to 25 years in prison for each murder, served in New York's Supermax prison, Attica Correctional Facility. In February of 1979, David held a press conference and stated that his claims about demonic possession were a hoax. So then why, sir? Why? David stated to a court-appointed psychiatrist that he was lashing out in anger against a world he felt had rejected him. He felt that he had been particularly rejected by women, which could be one of the reasons that he specifically targeted attractive young ladies. In 1986, David became a born-again Christian in prison. According to his personal testimony, his moment of conversation occurred after reading a Bible scripture given to him by a fellow inmate. He says he is no longer referred to as the Son of Sam, but the Son of Hope. In 1990, David Berkowitz was moved to Sullivan Correctional Facility, where he remains today. David Berkowitz has been the inspiration for many a movie, TV show, and books, such as the 1999 Spike Lee drama Summer of Sam, Netflix's Mindhunter, and Netflix did a documentary, The Sons of Sam, A Descent into Darkness, which just goes into describing in detail the satanic cult history, as well as Maury Terry's investigation to this case. 2016 young adult novel Burn Baby Burn by Meg Medina, which is set in New York during 1977 and depicts how fear of being one of the Son of Sam victims affected the daily lives of people and many more. No lie, read that book. Pretty good book. And that is the story of the son of Sam, David Berkowitz. Rest in peace to the victims. Thank you all so much for joining me. I'm Marissa Blackwood, and don't forget to tune in next week for a new All Things Murder, if you dare.